So here today we have a very, very special guest. We have City Grow, and City Grow is someone who has knowledge that is well beyond what I could ever say. So this is something that I felt is not only an honor, but it's also something that I want to make sure that I ask all the questions that I can possibly ask. But today this is definitely something that I really very much appreciate you giving me my your time. And is there anything you would like to say first off?
Sure, sure. I appreciate you inviting me on to your platform, brother. I'm like yourself, super passionate about the cannabis, the sacred plant, I like to call it. So yeah, I've been at it for quite a long time, and I'm sure we'll dig into that tonight, and we'll share it with your audience, and hopefully inspire some people to look at this medicine. As we all know, some of us use it recreational, some of us use it to deal with issues, whether it's PTSD, Crohn's, Parkinson's, all sorts of different things, cancers. It's quite a miraculous compound when you know how to use it properly. And also, we want to try to teach as many people as we can how to grow their own. Because there's a lot of people that just, they don't have the resources to be able to go out to the dispos and go grab it, which we all like to do that. But it's sometimes it beats down on your budget, so if you can grow a plant or two or even a dozen, whatever your situation is, or even if you're going to grow some to share with some friends. So we'll get into that tonight. So again, I appreciate you for inviting me on, and let's dive into it.
Hell yeah. Where are you actually coming from?
So I'm in the Boston area, Massachusetts, East Coast. I parked my car up here.
Yes, I'm from Massachusetts as well, so that's cool to hear.
Yeah, awesome, awesome.
How old were you when you first started actually hearing about the plant?
Well, I didn't hear about it. I think it was. I'll tell you the story that I share with my students. So, just a little quick background. I over the last probably 5 or 6 years, I've taught probably somewhere in the range of 300 or 400 people how to grow and running classes. But to go back in time, we're going to go into the Wayback Machine for a minute, and I was actually 12 years old. And a lot of us cats started out, 10, 12, 14, 16 years old. Sometimes people don't get into it till later in life, but and I hung out with the friends. I always hung out with the older kids because I found the kids my age, even though I hung out with them, I really couldn't learn much from them. So I was hanging out with the older kids. So this friend of mine who's 2 years older, he was about 14, and his older sisters were 18, 19, and his parents were the partying type, so they were gone on the weekends. And he was the cool house. The whole town would show up at his house practically. At least it seemed like it. And there was always the hippies hanging out back in the woods, circling up, little bonfire going, and they're passing around the happy hay, as I like to call it. And my buddy goes, "Hey, you want to try it?" And I was sleeping over that weekend. I'm like, I got no risk. Yeah, I'll try it. So, back in the days where we didn't really have a lot of supply, you have the one joint going around the circle, right? So when you get it, you take your biggest hit and you hold it till you turn purple, you know. And so I get in the line, and my buddy goes, "Here, just take it in." I had no idea. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't know how to draw around. He says, "Just like you're sipping a straw, just take it in and then just inhale it and just hold your breath for like 30 seconds or as long as you can." And cool, I do that. And of course, like everyone else, you cough. And I'm sitting there, I'm waiting. I turn to my buddy, and a few minutes later, I look at, "Hey, Jimmy, what am I supposed to feel?" And he goes, "You'll know." And I'm like, "All right, well, I didn't get anything out of that. I didn't get nothing. So no big deal." Well, wouldn't you know, the next weekend, I'm hanging out at Jimmy's house, and we're out in the back woods again. There's a party at Jimmy's. And he goes, "You want to try it again?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, okay." Second time, I try it, take the big drag, cough my brains out. "Hey, Jimmy, what am I supposed to feel?" And he goes, "You'll know." I'm like, "Okay, I didn't get nothing from that." I'm like, "Okay." Third time, it's a couple weeks later, and I wasn't sleeping over this third time. And he hanging out back, "You want to give it a go?" And I'm like, "All right, but that stuff doesn't get me high. I mean, but I'll try it. It doesn't do anything for me." Third time. Okay, so I take the big hit, I hold it in, I cough my brains out as usual. And then "Jimmy, what am I supposed to feel?" "You'll know." And I didn't get anything, but it was that night I wasn't staying over. So I took the hit and I was like, "Okay, I got to go walk home." So I live about a quarter mile away from Jimmy's house. So I walk home and I open up the door. I walk in and I step in and boom, it hit me. I hear my mother in the other room calling out to me, and all I heard was just like Charlie Brown. And I'm like, I know. And all of a sudden, I'm like, gotta go to the bathroom. So I hide in the bathroom for an hour and I am stoned. I am like, okay, so it hit me. So what happens is some people are endocannabinoid receptor system. Okay, every cell in your body, and I know you know this, but some of your audience are just learning this. Every cell in your body has a receptor site. A CB1 receptors in your brain, CB2 in the rest of your body. So every cell has these receptors. And what they do is they bind the receptor, think of it as a receiver, like a lock and a key. The compound goes through your bloodstream and boom, it binds and finds it. So when you smoke weed, it goes up to your CB1 receptors in your brain. It takes about 15 minutes to kick in. That's why when you're blazing, it kicks in. Now, in the early days when we were learning to smoke or we were smoking, we'd take hits until we got high. And sometimes, as we all know, sometimes you go a little too high. And it's like, when's this ride going to be over? And it's because we don't understand. And that comes down to dosing and understand how to dose properly. Obviously, now we know what our tolerance levels are. We know what we like and know what we can handle. So to speed up the story a little bit, so I got exposed to it at the age of 12. And once I got high that first time, I was like, okay, I was scared and nervous because I wasn't in the right setting. So they call it set and setting. If you're in the right set and setting, you got the right people around, you just say, hey, it's all right, let's go, let's go have some good times. You start to learn how to deal with it. But then I started to really realize I enjoyed it because growing up, I was a pretty uptight kid. I was fist fighting all the time and I was pissed off and I was beating up bullies. I hated bullies. And I would just, I have this blood type. It's an Irish blood type. It goes from 0 to 110 and a half a second. Like, you fucking cut me off, I'm going to fucking drive you off the road. And, when you're younger, you just don't have a control of that rage, right? And all of a sudden, I realized that weed was my medicine because I could be pissed off and want to duke it out with somebody, and a couple hits, forgot all about it. Not pissed off anymore. I'm chill. It's cool. So I found that as my mechanism to just unwind. If things piss you off, let's just smoke a joint. Smoke a joint. So that's how I got into it in the early days. And then what happened is later in life, I grew up in an era where we had um, times when you'd had some supply, you had some weed. It wasn't the best. It was the pressed Mexicans, the brick weeds, just the shitty outdoor grown that was just dried outdoors or shipped while it was still wet, and it might have a little mold and it might smell like ammonia. And we had times we'd have it, and then you'd have dry spells. So it was constantly you have some supply, and then you have dry spells. And we didn't know any difference between good weed or bad weed. We just know, did you have any weed? If you had a weed and it had seeds in it, and they'd pop and they'd burn your seeds, and we'd de-seed and we'd learn how to get the seeds out, and you just had this chafe and you'd smoke it. You get a lot of headaches. Then probably in the late, I'd say early 80s, around 80, 81, 82, we were starting to see the green weeds. Every once in a while, a little bit of green weed would make it through the hood, and then it would be gone. Then you'd have the brown weeds. And this is before we had names. So everything has a name today. When you have all these different, made up names, you either had good weed or shitty weed. You had either the really crappy moldy weed, which smelled like ammonia because it was still wet, or you got every once in a while a little green weed would make it through, and it was like, wow, what a treat to get the green weed.
Could I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
So when you say the names are kind of like nonsense, do you think that how should I say this? Do you think that a lot of these like classic old school strains, the ones that people are like in love with, the sour diesels, the OG Kushes, all of them, aren't they technically just something else and it's named these certain things? Like I've heard sour diesel technically is chemdog. What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when you get into the genetic code, that's different. So my era was, it was weed. You either had weed or you didn't have weed. And then it became you had good weed or shitty weed. And then you had green weed or no green weed. And then you had the first name I heard was lamb's bread. We thought it was lamb's breath, right? So that was the first time, and that was a Jamaican, cultivar. And so to answer your question, the genetic codes are where man, I really like what this one does for me, but I really love what this one does for me. And I really like them both. And I'd love to get them together and make a new one. It's like getting two people together and having a child, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you say, what is this one? There's your sour D. So it's genetic code mixing and breeding. So breeders figured out how to pollinate. And then all of a sudden you got a new seed and you go like, oh, let's see what happens with this one. And you grow a few of them and you go like, wow, this one is just different. It really works for me. What it is we some of us like I like a hybrid. I like something that's even keeled. The sativas, the problem for me with sativas, I'm already wound up as it is, and my mind's going all the time. When I have a sativa, it speeds it up, and I get too deep inside my head, and I get paranoia, and then I get anxiousness, and then like okay, I don't like that unsettled feeling. So I'm really not the biggest for me. My medicine is really I don't go towards the sativas, and I don't go as much for the indica.
Yeah.
Indica is the indicas that are a little bit heavier, and I'll break that down for you so your audience will have an understanding of it. So I like a hybrid, which gives me an even balance. Now, as a young guy like yourself, I could blaze just about anybody under the table, and I used to it was in the hustle. So when you're in the hustle, you have all types of weed. So I used to collect it. I had mason jars full of weed from all over the place as time progressed and through the 80s. So I would have this big case of ounces of weed from Colombia, from Panama, from Jamaica, just from Canada, everywhere. And so what you find is the ones you gravitate. So like you could blaze, blaze, blaze. But as I got older, I don't blaze like I did when I was a kid. I don't really don't burn it. Very rarely do I burn it. I prefer to use a vape. So I use a vaporize it. So let me just show you this thing.
Have you ever been into glass?
No, I didn't get into that. I think this battery's dead. Oh,
Because
there it
I've
is.
I've always loved
Yeah,
bongs. I
batteries.
like bongs a lot. It's very interesting
Yeah,
with the flavor profile you can get. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's same thing with like joints. I love to actually be able to experience the flavor. You know what I mean? I feel like the flavor is a big piece of the puzzle of all of the strains that are getting produced right now. You know what I mean?
yeah, I do. I I love the flavor. As I was going through this journey, this cannabis experience, I use the word cannabis. I don't use marijuana because that's a slang term. That was a made up term. Cannabis is the actual technical term, so I've always called it cannabis. But when I was younger, you'd smoke anything because you just got weed. And then as you started to get some decent weeds coming through, then I got a little bit connoisseurish. That means I started to develop a palate, the palate for the flavor, the taste. And then I got into the the whole ritual of breaking it down, getting the stems out, using particular papers. We started out with what we called easy widers, which is like newspaper. Okay, we didn't know.
Yeah.
And then you get into jokers, and then you get into zigzags, and then you get into club papers with no glue, and they're light as a feather, and they no ash. And so I really get into the flavor. That's when I started to get a palate for the flavor and the burn and the enjoyment. And what I know now, I wish I knew back then, but one of those when as you're going through the experience, as you get that blaze, and you go, man, that's great flavor, and the effect is awesome. And then you put it out, and then you relight it, and it still has flavor. Well, what that is, the compounds in that genetic code are sesquiterpenes. Okay, so as you mature, your palate matures. Like everybody today goes to dispo and they look, the younger folks. I like to say younger because I'm older. They go for numerics, the numbers. What's the highest one you got? What's the strongest one you got? Is it 30? Is it 35? Is it 32? Is it 28? It really doesn't, that's really not what you look at. I know you know this, but
Yeah.
the audience, we need to teach them that it's terpenes. All right. So the terpene flavors, and you have two types. Well, there's three different types of terpenes, but the two dominant ones are monoterpenes. You'll smell it in the bag, and then when you blaze it, the first couple of hits will have a flavor, and then it just kind of gets plain. It'll get you high and it'll get you to the place you're trying to get to in the head, but part of the experience is the flavor, right? So monoterpenes flash. So when you draw through that joint, right, you draw the heat through it, it flashes off the terpenes, the esters, the plant alcohols, and then it's just pot. The sesquiterpenes are multi-bond terpenes that off gas at higher temperatures. So when you're burning it, you're tasting it all the way through. Now, I teach this in my classes. I want you to visualize a yellow bus, like a school bus, right? It's got seats in it, right? And up front, it's got a steering wheel. And I learned this as I did my research and studies. And I think it was Bubble Man, Marcus Richardson, that came out with this, and he was talking about it. And I like to use it and teaching people. The seats in the bus are the cannabinoids. Now, you know, THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, is a cannabinoid. CBD is a cannabinoid. CBG, CBN. There's quite a few. The cannabis plant, based on the genetic code, has anywhere between 84 and 104 cannabinoids. Most people don't know that unless you really deep dive into the science of it. Now, terpenes, right? So the seats are the cannabinoids on the bus. Up front, the steering wheel, that's terpenes. Terpenes steer the direction of where that genetic code is going to bring you, that cultivar. Is it going to bring you to that place you're looking for? Is it the medicine that you like? Does it suit you? Now, you might have 3 or 4 go-tos, like, yeah, I like this one, I like that one. But it's the terpenes. So really, we need to teach people that it's not as much about the potency, because you could have something that's 15 or 18% THC, but it might have a 2 or 3% terpene value, right? Percentage. And all of a sudden, it has that amazing effect because the modulation from the terpenes are what's happening. And that's where it gets back into those names. So when you hear the name, like there's always that battle over the sour D's. Is it the real one? Is it not? Oh, I got the real one. No, you don't. And I know because I grew up in New York, or I had it, and all these different things, but who knows? Things change and they evolve. And what happens is a lot of the genetic code is muddled from all the breeders throwing in, oh, let's throw this at it, let's throw that at it. And then you have the code. That's why when you get into the quote unquote land race, which is some of the people I study, they say, well, land race really is something that's untouched by humankind. That's a true land race. Once we touch it, then it's, cultivated variety. And so we're trying to take those genetic codes and revisit it. So let me speed up the story a little bit, right? Because I was, a consumer of it and in the hustle and having a good time and just really enjoyed my weed. I really wasn't a drinker. I mean, I would have a social drink here and there, but I didn't gravitate to the alcohol. I gravitated to the weed because it made me feel better and relax. Because you go to a booze party and there's always fights and the cops show up. You show up to a weed party. The only fight at a weed party is over the last slice of pizza. It's like, and then we're going to buy another one anyways because we got the munchies. But it was, the year was 1987. And I was hanging out in a joint circle with some friends. Actually, it was 86, towards the end of 86. I just got married, had my first child, and I'm renting a house. And I'm in a joint circle where I worked, hanging out at the time. And there was a few people in the circle I didn't know. It didn't matter to me because we were all cannabis people, right? That's how you bridge the divide, right? Cannabis bridges the divide between cultures and people. Because if you like weed and I like weed, well, we're family, right? We're cannabis family. And so this tall blonde-haired kid, he must have been 6'3". He's standing in the circle, he's smoking, and we're smoking the greatest swag you can get your hands on. It was shit because nobody had any weed. So it had sticks and stems and seeds. And, I just described it. It was just a crappy joint. And I get my hit, right? Because when it goes around the circle, that's why, this is, by the way, this is why everybody took the biggest hit they can. And then you got that one friend, like my friend Ricky. We call him Canoe Ricky, right? Ricky, it's canoeing, blazing right up one side of it. I'm like, stop, lick it, or blow through, whatever. Anyways, I get my hit and I go, God, this stuff sucks. I should just grow my own. I just said it just because I was sick and tired of growing, smoking shitty weed. And the dude, the blonde-haired kid, he goes, dude, do you have a place? And I go, yeah, why? And he goes, I'll call my mother tonight and have her ship me my lights. And I'm like, what? My heart starts pounding when I think about my mother knowing I'm going to grow some weed. She'd kill me, murder me, and put me in my room for a month. And he goes, no, dude, I'm from Colorado. Everybody grows. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, I'll have my mother ship me my lights. I'm like, okay, cool. And I just thought it was just, us, ego talking. But wouldn't you know, 2 weeks later, my beeper goes off. Daddy, what's a beeper? Well, it's a little thing we wore, and I have, people call you up. I'm like, hey. So my beeper goes off. I called the kid up. His name was Jeff. I go, hey, Jeff, what's going on? He goes, I got my lights. Are you ready? And I'm like, hold on. I got to talk to my wife. So I said, honey, I want to grow some pot plants up in the attic. That was my little man town. It was an attic. I want you to picture the scene. There's cobwebs, and I got a little coffee table, and I got seeds and roaches, and I got my wraps, and I got some pipes and a little bong. And that's where I'd go after work, and I go get a couple hits, come down, a new person. It just says, well, why do you want to do that? And I said, well, I'm spending like $40 a week for an ounce. Now I was blazing an ounce a week. Now keep in mind, half of it's sticks and stems and seeds.
Mhm.
So you really weren't getting an ounce of weed. Yeah, it was a weight ounce or a 3 finger ounce or 4 finger. That's how we measured. We didn't have a scale. If you got a 4 finger ounce, you got it. But if you got a 3 finger, like, dude, what's there, a delivery fee or something? You pinching? No, it's just you gotta break it up. Like, all right, that's when you know you're getting ripped off. Then you get the little finger scale and you just clip it on the bag and go, dude, it's 3/4. Look, see, what's up? I don't know. The dude gave it to me. All right, so everybody's sticking their hand in the bag, and you get a bag because you don't know the guy. If you don't know the guy, you got your friend getting it for you, and he's pinching for his own supply. That aside, my wife says, well, why do you want to grow it? Because it's costing me $40 a week. And I'm just starting out, got a young family, and like, she gave me the green light. So game on, baby. It's happening. And so I'm up in the attic, and this is where it gets interesting. When you first start out, you don't know what you don't know. And if I only knew then what I know now, man, this shit I could have grown. Knock your socks off. But you guys can obviously check me out on my Instagram. It's City Grown. It's all one word. You'll see Joe D there. And then there's a link in there to my YouTube channel as well. So you can check that out. Little plug for myself. Yeah,
Oh
just
yeah.
saying. Anyways, so I'm up in the attic. It's we're starting in May. So I had over time saved up a small little handful of seeds, maybe 8 to 10. I don't remember exactly, but they had tiger stripes on. They looked beautiful, and I collected and saved them. Whenever there was every once in a while a little bit of good weed would go through the neighborhood. And if you were lucky enough to get a small little 1/4 ounce of it, and there was a seed, it was like, oh my God, my precious. Today we buy weed with no seeds. We buy sinsemilla. That's, by the way, that's the Spanish word that just means without seed. And you get a seed today from the dispo or from the grow up, and you're like, oh my God, I got the seed. I got their code. It's a Hermy, most likely. That's how you got the seed, because they're hermaphrodite, right?
Yeah.
So the genetic code is not the strongest, but that aside, we start growing the plants, and they're growing. They're looking beautiful. It's, about 4 weeks in, it's starting to turn to June, and we're up in the attic, and I get these big green leaves and these big giant lights with these hoods on them. And it's like boom, like you're looking at the sun. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm growing weed in the attic. And I come home one day, and it's getting real hot because it's summertime now, right? And it's in an attic with no insulation. It's got black shingle roofs, and it gets toasty up there.
Ooh.
I come home, and guess what? My leaves were all sagging down like this, and I'm like a full panic. I'm like, oh my
They're all
God.
dead.
I called Jeff up. Jeff, something wrong with the plants. He goes, did you water them? Of course I watered them. I hugged them. I watered them. I love them. And he goes, how hot is it? I go, don't they like the heat? I mean, aren't they from the jungle? And he goes, I go, I'm sweating when I'm up there. And he goes, dude, it's probably too hot. And I go, well, yeah, it's probably like 110 degrees, but they don't like that. And he goes, not that hot. That's a problem. All right, so we got a major problem. I got these beautiful plants. They're about a foot tall. They got all these big fat leaves. I've never seen them before. And I'm like, Jeff, can I just pluck a couple leaves and dry them out and smoke them? Because I got no weed. And he goes, no, that's not going to get you high. There's no resin on it. And I'm like, what's that? Because we never saw resin on our plant. We just saw brown, outdoor, dried in the sun, pushed into a package. And, we didn't see resin.
Could we explain what resin actually is for the people who aren't fully
Yeah.
aware? Because basically, tell me if I'm wrong. The resin is what you get from the trichomes. Am I
Well, that
right?
is trichome. Yeah, trichomes are what another nomenclature we call it.
Yeah.
The name of the street is resin, or crystals or sugar or whatever you want to call it. But I'll explain it to you. So, and here's an analogy. Do you ever get pizza delivered to the house in the box? Yeah,
Yeah.
sure you did. We've all got that, right? You pick the box. Now, you don't start chewing on the box to get to the goodness inside, right?
No.
No, you open it up, and there's the pizza. The leaf itself, right? That's the pizza box. The crystals on top that come out as it matures when it's in flowering mode, The plant puts these resins on, which are called glandular trichomes. Those resins the plant puts out to protect it from sunlight because it's like a sunscreen, and also from bugs because it's super sticky. So it protects from bugs and it protects from the sunlight so the plant can survive. What the plant is trying to do when it grows a flower or a bud, it's trying to replicate itself. So it's trying to capture pollen that might be present. So it puts these the little pocket, the bract, it's called a bract, and two little hairs come out of it, right? These two little hairs come out of the bract. And these two hairs are trying to collect pollen that might be in the air in nature or introduced by a breeder. So what happens is the the pistils or stamens will capture that pollen, and then a seed grows, and then resin is put on the outside of the seed pod or the bract to protect it from getting bugs to it. So, but we found over thousands of years, we've figured out that by smoking it, it gives us a different feeling, a euphoria. So when you smoke it, you're taking in all the cannabinoids, the esters, plant alcohols, the lipids, waxes, flavonoids, all these compounds are in that resin. So those that like hashish, like a more refined cannabis, they don't want to smoke the biomass. They just want you to take that resin off. You can keep the biomass, and then you smoke and it has super flavor, like you said. You like bongs and stuff. What I found as I was on this journey of smoking a lot of weed and blazing an ounce a week, and then when I was growing my own, man, I was blazing all the time, and I had unlimited supply. And what happens is you notice it because you're a blazer. You hack up a lung in the morning. You start hacking up the mucus, and what's happening is your lungs are trying to clean themselves, just like the bong or the pipe. When you see your bong and it's all dirty, you didn't run the salt and the ISO through it to clean it. Your lungs look like that too. And what happens is your body wants to get that out of there. So I started to realize that I was hacking all the time and always clearing my throat all the time, and I just like this ain't right, right? So when I started to get into my 30s and into my 40s, I was like, I can't do this anymore because I'm going to hurt myself. Now, the weed doesn't hurt you, but the tar will. The tar will cause you problems with breathing. Then you'll have shortness of breath and so forth. So that's when I started to change how I was taking in my medicine. Hence vaporization. I started vaporizing. Oh shit, probably over at least 12, maybe 15 years ago. I stopped burning it. I started just heating up the resins and getting the flavors because I really like the flavors. And I get people that go, "Oh, let's blaze up a joint." I'm good. I appreciate it, but I don't like the flavor of the burning of the joint anymore. I like the flavor of the resins.
Could I ask
So
this though? Would you say that sometimes the experience or the way it actually affects, like the whole smoking experience, whether or not you're gonna be choking up and coughing, it could depend on the way it's grown, what it's grown with, and certain things like that.
it's not so much what was grown with. It's really what was sprayed on it.
Definitely.
Because some inexperienced growers or a product that's grown by different cultures, I'll say, that don't care about you. All they care about is the money. They want to
Hmm.
hustle and sell the weed, and they start getting mold and bud rot, botrytis, things like that, and they'll spray it with chemicals or products that really you shouldn't heat up and burn. It might
Definitely.
stop the powdery mildew, it might stop the mold, but when you burn it at temperature, it turns to a different compound. It can hurt you. So, like the Eagle 20 and all these other different things you'd spray on it. You can spray things, but you want to use natural products. And you also want to make sure that you're not doing it into the flower cycle. That's all into, learning how to grow properly. But as far as, people have the issue with flushing, that tinny taste and stuff. So you might have somebody that grew and just kept feeding the plant right to the very end. And I've done this years and years ago, probably early 90s. I didn't know. I had a grow buddy at the time after Jeff had moved on. I got another grow buddy and moved my op. Oh, by the way, I was growing skunk back then. So
Wow.
the whole neighborhood stunk like dead
Yeah.
skunks. It was scary. I got to tell you, you come home and like, I'm driving into my neighborhood and I'm like, oh God, I could smell my own grow just pulling around the corner. And I was like, crap, I'm going to get caught. And this is how guys get caught because we didn't have carbon filters to scrub the air and get rid of the smell. But back to what I was telling you is if you're growing like, heavy feeding with salt based or, products like that, you're not going natural or living soils or organic approach. Your plant might consume a lot of those salts, and if you don't know to let the plant, consume some of that down before you harvest, where you either stop feeding it or you do a flush or you use products to, or you taper. The proper way is to taper your nutrients down so the plant will consume it, so that you're not having something that tastes kind of tinny or just does it gives you harshness in the back of the throat. Sometimes that harshness is curing. It wasn't properly cured. If the product is still not mature enough in the sense of curing, because you can dry it, but you also need to cure it. So you can dry it in that 10 to 14-day period, but then curing, like when I do a natural grow, and if I'm not using technology, I'll cure it for like 4 weeks, minimum of 3 weeks. At 2 weeks, I'm kind of on the threshold, but when you start cracking your jars or whatever you're using for the curing process, you might, if you're using jars, you have to burp them, let the gas out, let the chlorophyll out, and let the moisture out, and so forth. If you try to move that product into your friend, sharing it with your friends, I like to call it sharing with your friends. You know what I'm saying? You pick up my drift, right? So
Definitely.
when I'm sharing, right, it's like I want it to be, again, in the hustle, it's like turning and getting the do re mi coming your way. But when you start to get into being an artist at what you're doing, and you want to say, hey, I'm really interested in impressing someone versus making a couple of bucks. That's cool. That's just offset your cost of operations, but you're really trying to impress them and going like, holy shit, I never had anything like that in my life. Wow, that's awesome. Boom, I got a winner. So grow it properly, feed it properly, taper it off properly, take it down and dry it, and then cure it, and understanding that whole process. That's part of the education. If I had only had those type of guidances along the way, I would have learned faster. But I had to learn the hard way because I stayed in the closet for growing up until about 2012, just
Wow.
around mid 2012. And so I started in 87, and you can see there was there was three people that knew that I was growing. My wife, myself, and Jeff, a kid from Colorado. And then I replaced Jeff when he went back home to Colorado 2 years after we started. I got another grow buddy who had a situation where he owned a house and he was in the woods and he was a bachelor. And I was like, this is going to be great. That one for about 5 years. But there was three people that knew, and I just never told a soul. Now I was smart enough to know that loose lips sink the ship,
Definitely.
right? And hey, Kevin, you're my best friend, man. We've been, we're tight, right? We're brothers, right? Don't tell anybody. But that killer green that you get? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't tell anybody, but I'm growing it. Kevin's going to go to his best friend and go, listen, hey, don't tell anybody, but I'm not supposed to tell you. But Joe's growing that killer green that we're getting, right? That's how it happens. The next thing you
It
know,
does.
the whole fucking town knows that you're growing the killer because they all want it. So I just knew not to tell a soul. And I just made up stories of where I was getting it, and blah, blah, blah. And I know a guy that goes to Hawaii and he flies out, blah, blah, blah. And he comes in with the killer green. Because remember, I came from a place where we had brown 3 finger, 4 finger bags that we paid $40 for. That was an ounce. Then the green weed started to come, and you got this big fluffy, Ziploc like this, bulging, that was an ounce of green weed that you had to use scissors to cut it up. It was so sticky. We didn't see sticky weed until I started to bring it around,
What was
at
the
least
first
into,
time? I'm sorry to interrupt, but what was
it's
the
okay.
first time you actually like seen something that had a name on it?
Like I
When you
said,
were getting.
the first name I saw, the first name was the Jamaican lamb's bread.
Oh, the lamb's red.
Yeah, the lamb's bread was the first name that I remember. It wasn't, it was still a brown weed,
Yeah.
and it leaned on the sativa side, and so that was the first name. The first green weed I had didn't have a name. It was just like the see my virtual background there. That's my logo, but you see that
Wow.
green there. When you see that, stuff like this where it's like vibrant, fluorescent green,
Yeah.
we did, what the hell is that? And it just had an incredible smell. I'll never forget it. My first experience to that was like, oh God. And I was living, I had no money, nothing like that, but I saved up a little bit of money to buy a quarter ounce of it, and then broke it up into, $10 bags, gram bags, getting $10 a gram bag back then, and they were paying it. And it was like, no way. And I ran out, and everybody was begging me for something. I said, yeah, I can get the guy, but it's crazy. He wants 15, and they were paying it. Dude, this is in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, it was 80. By 89, I started to get the hang of it, right? I had some good by 89, $15 a gram. And it was unheard of. That's 4.80 an ounce back then,
Yeah.
when the street weed was $40 an ounce, right? And they were paying it.
I've
So it
heard
was like
I've heard for a sour diesel in New York it was going for like absurd amounts at one point. You know what I mean?
1,500. I heard
Yeah.
1,500 a zip.
There's some
Um,
stuff on the alternative market at the moment that's going for 1500, even higher at the moment. It's
yeah,
insane. But it's more or less people are buying it for the hype. You know what I mean? People are buying it
yeah,
for the like the wrong reasons. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's because they say that just because they can brag that they did, and
Exactly.
and you can grow your own and blow them away and just say, yeah, that cost me, $50 to grow that, and but so that's where it all started out for me was, just I found that I really loved the plant. And here's what happens as you start to look back on the journey of life. You start to look back and you analyze and you say, you know what, cannabis seeked me out, it found me, and then the plant found me, and we serve each other. So it's like this: energy in equals energy out. If I care for it and I give it the attention, the love, and I put the time in, and I learn from my mistakes, and I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not that guru that says I know it all, right? I don't. I'm always learning, still learning. And I used to say to people, I'm not the best grower in the world, but I grow some good weed,
Yeah.
right? And when you share it with people, and they come back and say, "Oh my God, that was incredible," I'm like, "Really? Really?" I'm like, "Cool." And then I started playing with breeding. Not I don't call it breeding. I call it pollen chucking, right? So a true breeder is a person that would take two cultivars, reverse one or two regulars. Because let me teach your audience this: seeds come in these forms of regular seed, which one seed would be male, one seed would be female. We call it a 50-50 mix. So you could have a bag of seeds and half would turn out female, half would turn out male. And the pollen, you have to learn to isolate those, get them out of your grow. Otherwise, everything gets seeded. And the market doesn't want seeded weed. They want sensimilia. They want clean weed, which is no big deal if it has seeds in it. It's not a big deal. It's just that you get more value because seeds are going to add weight, and you're paying for weight, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so you have regular seeds, and then you have feminized seeds. So, and then you have autoflower seeds, which are a mix of ruderalis and whatever genetic the breeder mixed. But the feminized seed is where you take a plant and you spray a product on it to call reversing it or back. It's a reversal. So basically, you're spraying with either colloidal silver or using a mixture of silver thionite and products like that, which would block the ethylene production in the flower or in the leaf production, and it would stress the plant, where the plant would then produce male pollen flowers along with female pistils, and it would pollinate itself, or selfing, they call that. Typically, you do it with two plants, one of the same genetic code, which is just female, and then you reverse one and you pollinate the other.
Now we're
So you
getting
can
very
get
close to the
seeds that
end.
would
I
be
definitely
genetically.
appreciate that you have made it this far. But if you want to see more content that is very similar, definitely hit that subscribe button. On this channel, we're going to be doing a lot of different interviews that I think you will very much be interested to hear. These interviews, I want to send a message that some of these underdogs are the ones that you will be able to find the most motivation and find the most similarities to. So, these are the voices who actually have a very, very, very valuable stance to take, and also are going to be something that I find a lot of enjoyment in interviewing. So, if you find any enjoyment in listening to those interviews, hit that subscribe button. On my other channel, I'm going to be posting some of the clips, so subscribe over there. Also, go follow us on Instagram. With all this being said, definitely check out what we have coming in the future. Okay, so we left off on a very important point, but is it okay if we get back to asking a few questions that I had on this
Sure.
list?
Yeah,
Um,
hit me.
when you actually first started, did you have a mentor?
Yes, it was Jeff from Colorado. So so Jeff was he just took me around his he took me around the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'll just show you the basics, soil, watering, stuff like that." So we did a couple of grows together to start out. I think we did two, three. I think we did about 3 or 4 grows together. And then he was only going to Berkeley School of Music here in Boston. And then it's a 2-year school. So after school was done, he went back to Colorado. And then I was on my own, but I was also in a situation where I was growing I forgot to tell you guys, we went from the attic where it was over hot to the shed in the backyard. And that's where I said, hey, we can do it in the shed. So we built a room inside I had a big 20 by 20 shed, and we built a little room in the corner, a 10 by 10 room. And that was the flower, veg and flower room all in one. And so we did a handful of grows together, but it was getting pretty scary because of the stench.
Yeah.
We were growing skunkweed back then. That's what we had for good weed. And it was just super scary because I'm just trying to grow some weed for myself and to share with a few friends. And so after Jeff moved back, I found another friend who was a little older, but he had a house and it had a real nice situation. We built a hidden room. It was a hidden room where we'd take a bookcase out and we go inside this room, inside the center of his house. You'd never know it was there. We put everything up through the chimney chase, and we ran water up because he was building the house. We built it with a little special room. It was awesome. So so back to the hit me with the question you want.
Um,
Oh yeah, it was the mentor. That was Jeff to start.
yeah, well, do you think I have two questions. One is when did you start growing outside? And then the other one is just kind of like a quick question. Do you think that room that was behind the briefcase or behind the
The
bookcase, I
bookcase.
should say, um,
Mhm.
do you think that that was made because of the Underground Railroad?
Well, it wasn't the Underground Railroad. We did it for security and
Oh,
protection and
wow.
not getting arrested. Because you're growing at the time, it's an illicit, substance, and you're
Yeah.
growing it, you're cultivating, and you get some time for that. So we wanted to make sure we were as private as possible and as discreet as possible. As I told you, I never told anybody I grew for a long time. So when I came out of the closet and I told some very close friends that I had for 30 years, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to be mad at me." And one of my close friends, he goes, "Nah, man, you're my brother. I'd never be mad at you. You're always there for me, man." I said, "Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to be mad at me. You're going to be pissed." And he goes, I said, "Remember that killer greenweed we used to get back? Oh, God, if I had that today," he'd said. And I said, "Yeah, I grew it." And he goes, "No, you didn't." I said, "Yeah, I grew it." "No, you didn't." I said, "Yeah, I did. I told you stories so you wouldn't." "Well, you didn't trust me, man." And I'm like, See, I said, "See, you're mad at me." And I said, "No, dude, it was because I have a family and I didn't want to get caught and I didn't want anybody else bragging about me." I said, I gotta tell you, when you're a guy, we all have ego, and you're growing the killer green and everybody's bragging about it, and you can't tell anybody you did that work. It was tough, I gotta tell you, until 2012, and I'll tell you why. 2012, because Massachusetts went legal for med. So for medical, it was legal. And all of a sudden I started to peek out the closet like, who's out here? And I started to go on a search because, like you said, the mentor, I had one, and it was for a short period of time, and he only knew a little bit. He knew enough so we'd grow a few plants. And I had all types of problems: spider mites, molds, bugs, powdery mildew. I mean, everything. Not dried and cured properly. All that stuff he didn't know. I had to figure it out on my own through trial and error, and I never quit. I never gave up. Now, in those periods where you stop growing for a period of time, but you get back to it. So the mentor was myself coming out of the closet around 2012. And then by, 2013, 14, I was like, fuck it. I'm going to set up a, YouTube channel, and I'm going to start getting on, I'm going to start talking about it because I don't care anymore, because it's like, it's not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
Here's a fact. In history, there's not one case of anybody dying from the overconsumption of cannabis. not like opioids, not like alcohol. Those all kill people. But cannabis has never killed anybody. It's a medicine that makes you happy. It makes you laugh. It makes you relax. It makes you chill. It helps you sleep. It helps kill cancer cells. I mean, all these different things you start to learn what it can do and how you can turn it into different products. And I learned all that. And the reason I did was later in life, my dad passed from cancer. And I know in my studies, I came across information that said it helped with people with cancers, and I wanted to learn about it. And I studied my ass off. So now I know how to make fecal oil, or what the street calls is RSO, Rick Simpson oil. And I know how to make tinctures, and I know how to do extracts and hashish and all these different products you can make from it. So that's where it all kind of started out. And then I just got to a point like, this is great. I learned all these things and I went searching for more knowledge. I started to search for people that were doing it and doing it better than me. And I needed to learn. I needed to gather information. Then I started to realize like, yeah, I already know that. Okay, I know that too. But I'm not saying I had all the answers, but when you get a golden nugget, I call it, information is value. And that is when you get that golden nugget, you can spend it for a lifetime. So I made a decision. I was going to start teaching people how to do this because when you leave this place, it's really about what did you do while you were here? Because all your shit is left behind. Stuff doesn't matter. It's cool to have cool stuff and stuff like that, but you leave this place and it's about what did you do positive? How did you impact your family while you were there? And I don't mean just my personal family. I mean, we're all family. We're all in a vessel in a sea of space, right? And we all have different skin tones and different attitudes, and we grew up in different neighborhoods and all this sort of stuff. And you'll find that, but if we smoke weed, we're the same. If you close your eyes, everybody looks the same, right? And it's really about how people treat you. And here's the one thing I always say to people: people don't always remember what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And
Yes.
weed makes you feel good. And it takes away a lot of stresses in life. And that's why I started smoking pot because I just wanted to change my outlook, my reality of, the different things you're dealing with in life, whether it's school or family or parents yelling at you, all sorts of stuff, or the lack of not having things because you don't have the dough, and your friends do, and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I gravitated towards it. It found me, and so the cannabis plant and myself, we have a unity, we have a connection. And then I started to share it. So I started making seeds, and then I just started giving them everybody like I was Johnny Appleseeds. Here's seeds, free seeds, free seeds. Go grow your weed. And I have no excuse. And then I said, I'm going to teach people how to do this. And like I said, I've taught hundreds of people how to get started and how to start growing. Now, it doesn't mean everybody's going to stick with it. It's a hobby. It's like any other hobby in your life. You're like, yeah, that was cool. I did that for a while. Now, oh, let's go do this. Squirrel. You know, what else can I do? And some of us, a small percentage will stick with it passionately and we'll take the base of what we know and we'll continue to expand on it and then learn the craft even better and better. And my growing styles have been all types, from starting out with soil and just using back guano, or worm castings, which is worm poop, or, cow manure, all those sort of things. Now, to answer the question you asked me that I didn't answer yet, which was when did I start growing outdoor? Well, it'll surprise you that I didn't start growing outdoor until about maybe 6 years ago. I always stayed indoors,
Wow.
underground, hidden, don't tell anybody. Outdoor is highly risky. Now,
Sure.
even though it's legal and yeah, it's legal, it's okay. Yeah, I know. And the kid down the block who's waiting for your plants to get a little bit mature is going to help you with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to come out and you find out he helped you. Him and
Yeah.
his buddies took them for you, and he's going to dry them out for you, all right? Because they're outdoors.
Hmm.
So if you'll see some of my postings on my Instagram, I had a pretty big greenhouse that I customized and grow in it, but it was all caged in. And so there's certain things you want to do and keep private, when you're growing outdoors. But outdoor, although the sun is free, the challenge is real. And that challenge is not so much growing, it's when you get to the end of the season, especially here in New England. If you're not doing light deprivation, where you're triggering the plant to go to flower much earlier than it normally would, you have a big challenge because you have warm days and cold nights. And that change in temperature gives you dew, like the wet grass in the morning. When you walk out and your feet get wet, guess what? Those flowers you have, those nice buds you have are all wet inside and they don't dry out. And what happens is you have problems. And if you don't have the right genetic codes or cultivars, we call that cultivated variety. A lot of people call it strains, right? Which is it's a street name for it, strain. I use cultivar. It's just the proper, scientific name, but it doesn't make a difference. I know the difference. It's a matter of if you don't have the right genetic code that you're growing for New England, right? You're going to run into some challenges where you're going to get bud rot and you're going to have problems and you can't finish the plant. Because when you're growing doors, I control the atmosphere, temperature, humidity, light, air movement, everything. And if I can control that, I have a greater chance of having a really good finish with a really good flower, a good product. Again, when you share it with people and they go, wow, can I have another? That's the true test that you did well. See, it's funny. A lot of growers, even, we all get ego and like, I'm growing this killer weed. If you're at the dispo, it's about, they don't care about the grower. They just care about getting a good product and they smoke it. If they like it, they buy it again. That's the real test that you did a good job on your weed. If someone's constantly buying it and if the dispo is running out of it, then you know you've got a good winner there, for that flower.
What do you think the big difference is between outdoor and indoor? Between for the effects, I should say. What is the difference between indoor and outdoor for effects?
So outdoor growing is a term, it's a French term, it's called terroir. All right, terroir is a mix of the area, the microorganisms in the soils, the minerals in the soils, the air, the water, and the minerals in the water. So you could get like wines. You could have a grapes grown in France or grapes grown in California, the same exact grapes, but they'll have two different flavors because of the terroir. That means the environment, the atmosphere, the soils, the minerals, and so forth. So outdoor growing, you have terroir if you're growing in the earth. Okay, that's one factor. You could be growing outdoors, but in containers, which is different. Now you're controlling the inputs, and you can manipulate that a little bit. But you also have a genetic, not a genetic, a light code. Okay, the sun puts out frequencies of codes from 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers in different frequencies. So the sun has a PAR, PAR, it's photosynthetic active radiation. Outdoors, you're typically in the 2000 range if you're in direct sunlight, depending on the azimuth of the sun. Okay, I know this is tech talk, and I know it's given words that some of your audience doesn't know, but so they will know if they stick with it, the growing passion. They'll learn these terms. It's a language, and when you understand the language, you can communicate. So the sun has a frequency, a different code than indoor lighting. Indoor lighting, we're trying to mimic what Mother Nature does. We're trying to mimic the code. We started out with HID, high intensity discharge lights. Then we went to, from there, fluorescent lights, HID lights, CMHs, LECs, the early versions of LEDs, which were purple, which were shit. Then you got full spectrum LEDs. Then you've got UV light you're adding in, and you're trying to get a recipe, a blend of lights to get this really nice expression off your plant. So outdoor sun grown, you're going to get a different expression than you would from an indoor with the same exact genetics. You're going to get a different expression. You'll probably get different flavors too if you're using the soil. Now you could be growing outdoors in cocoa and be feeding it with salts, and you can get a really good grow with the genetic code if you can finish the plant. That's always the challenge in outdoor growing here in New England. Now, some of your audience might hear, they might be from Midwest, they might be from the left coast or wherever, or even other countries. Who knows what your audience gets? So when you make that choice of what plant you're going to grow, you want to know that it could potentially do well outdoors. That's why people look for stuff that is more sativa dominant or leaning, right? Because you have a mix of codes. So if you look for a sativa leaner versus an indica leaner, um, what happens is the genetic code of a sativa comes from a place on the earth, which is equatorial. All right, so you have the equator, right? So when you have plants that come closer to the equatorial range, you have things in Laos, Cambodia. You've got it from These areas it's very humid and it's hot all the time in a jungle. That's why the sativa plant stretches, and you have a lot of internodal spacing. You have a lot of airflow that goes through it. And then you have uh, indicas, as we use that nomenclature. It's really thin leaf drug cultivars or wide leaf drug cultivars. But on the street, we call them sativas and indicas. And then we have hybrids, right? That's what we use for words. But when you get into the indicas, they wide leaf and they usually stack closely. Those are plants that grew up in the areas like Kush. You heard the word Kush, right? Kush Mountains. That's Afghanistan. That's very dry and arid areas, Pakistan. So their plants can grow stacked. They don't need to stretch. The plant knows it for thousands of years. It comes from that area. But we take that stacked, fat little plant and we want to grow it in New England where it's wet. It ain't going to work out. It's a problem. So, to answer your question, sun grown can give you an amazing result if you have the right atmosphere and the right conditions and the right genetic code. Indoor, well, I'm controlling the atmosphere. I have technology that I have acquired over time. When I started out, I had no money. By the way, I was married, had no money, and my first grow was on borrowed lights from Jeff.
Wow.
We were both like penniless. We were just scraping to get by to buy our $40 bag of weed, right? I needed my weed because that's what kept me calm. I come home from work uptight. My wife goes, "You look like you need a puff." I go, "I do. I had a really bad day." And she says, "Why don't you go take care of that?" 2 minutes later, I come down, pie-eyed, and everything's okay. All better. Different guy, right? The new guy, right? The happy guy. Nothing bothers you. So, yes, sun-grown you can get some really incredible products with sun-grown, and you can get really good products with indoor. Now, indoor costs you more because of the energy, electricity. That's the difference.
Yeah. So do you think that outdoor can get you effects that are gonna last much longer?
Not necessarily longer, no. I mean, I'll do an edible, so I make my own edibles. So I extract, I make butters from my trim, and I use coconut oil and lecithin and things like that. And I make the butters. And if I take an edible, I'll teach you this, and I'll get back to the question, but it's related. When I ingest something like an edible, it goes down through my digestive system. The THC gets into my liver. The liver converts that compound, tetrahydrocannabinol, which is THC. In the unheated version or undecarboxylated, it's THCA or tetrahydrocannabinol acid. When you heat it up, like when you burn or you blaze or you vape, you're heating it up and you activate it. When you ingest it, as long as it was decarbed, it goes through your liver and converts the compound of THC to 11-hydroxy. It changes the molecular structure. The compound becomes stronger and more amplified, and it travels through your bloodstream. Now the compound going through your blood will bind with the receptors throughout all of your body, not just the head. That's why you get a body high, not just a head high. When you smoke, it goes up to your CB1 receptors. And you'll stay high depending on your tolerance levels for an hour or two, maybe. And then you start tapering off. And then you want to go chase that, like the wake and bake. We all love the wake and bake because it's the first high of the day and you get to that plateau you like. But then you chase it the rest of the day, trying to get back up to it. It's not that easy. And you have to keep blazing. So, but when you eat it, it goes through all your receptors through the entire body, and you get a body high, and for me, it lasts 4 or 5 hours. And again, once you know your tolerance level, your potencies. So, it's not going to be any different. Does relate to the grower's techniques of drying and curing and genetic code.
Do you think it also depends upon if it's fresh?
Yes. So the difference when it's fresh, quote unquote, fresh meaning it's properly cured and it's not aged. When the cannabis flower ages, you get a decarboxylation or decarbing. All right. So the glandular trichome, the resins, when they're as I teach growers, when you're looking with a magnifier like a loop or something, you're looking at the ripeness. You're looking at the resins. They look like think of it as a grape, okay? When you look at that casing, that bulbous trichome, and you look at it, it's clear, it's not ready to take down. When it's milky, it's ripe. So if you're looking at, different areas of that flower and you say, well, these are all milky, it's ripe. You could take it down if you wanted. But some people like their weed just a little bit heavier, a little bit more, I want to be in the couch. So as a grower, understanding I can let that plant mature further where that trichome becomes amber. Now, amber is a visual indicator that that trichome is maturing past maturity and into decarbing naturally.
Wow.
So now you're getting more CBN. That's another cannabinoid. So when you have more heavy latency of CBN, you're going to get a more heavier effect or a sedative like sleepy time effect, right? Because it's aged even further. Now, when you have weed sitting around too long and it over matures and over ages, you smoke that, yeah, you're gonna have a different high than from when it was fresh. It's gonna give you a different effect because it's now decarbing itself naturally.
Do you think that's the issue with a lot of the flour that's on the shelves of the legal market?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't say for fact because this is going to sound strange, but I've never purchased weed from a dispo ever.
Yeah.
I've only been in one or two times to just look inside to see what it looked like, and I'm not bragging or anything like that. It's just I have more than I grow my own and I grow what I like. I know I make my own genetics, so I know what I like and I know like my codes. Um, but to answer the question, the dispensary could have product that sits on the shelf for a while. Not all of them. There's some that do a great job, and there's great growers out there, and they turn the product. But again, that comes back to, hey, I grew this killer weed. Yeah, it's all right. What else you got?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if it's going to sit in its age, now they can only keep it on the shelf for a year, then they have to change it. And they'll take it and they'll turn it into other products. They'll turn it into edibles or they'll turn it into vape pens and all these other things. But to get good quality fresh flowers, right, that's when you want to look at the born on date, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's, 3 months old, it's all right. That's not bad. But when it starts to get to 6 months and old, it's aging. Um, and again, I don't really have a comparison because I don't buy from a dispensary, so I don't know. And I've seen people that have showed me packs and I said, "That's their A grade? Really?" I mean, that's actually that's like I would consider mids. I mean, it's dry and it's like in little tiny little buds. I'm like, wow, I'm feeling pretty good about myself because you get a big fat bud, and you get nice, fresh stuff. But it's understanding how to hold it. So you can do it, but the problem is the dispensaries don't have the technology in place to hold it. Now, if you're a cigar smoker, right, and a connoisseur of cigars, if you go to a cigar bar, you'll walk into their humidor. It's a walk-in humidor, and everything is kept proper. It's kept at the proper humidity and the proper temperature. And that's the same with weed. Like growing up, we had weed in little Ziplocs or even Glad bags. Roll it up and put it in your pocket. You can carry it around in your pocket or your jock, so you're hiding it from the cops, right? And you're always smelling weed. Like, why am I smelling weed? Because you're heating it up with your body temperature and you're ruining it.
Yeah.
You're actually what you're doing is the resin, the sugar, the crystals, they have plant alcohols in there, esters they call them. And when you heat it up, they off gas. And when you have a plant that's more of a monoterpene, you're ruining it because you're off-gassing that beautiful aroma. That's why how do we buy our weed? I know you know this because you're a connoisseur. There's four things that we look for in weed. Does she look pretty? Yeah, she does. She got perfume on. Oh God, she smells good. I should taste. Let's taste her. Mm. She tastes great. How does she make me feel? I feel good. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. And guess what? That's the four check boxes. As a grower, I say you got to hit the four check boxes. If you hit the four check boxes, guess what? That buyer comes back for another and another and another. That's your true test. Doesn't have to be 33% because I only buy the strongest shit you got. That's like going to the alcohol store and saying, "What's the strongest shit?" Well, we got Everclear, we got Graves in the back. It's 190 proof. Once you grab that, careful, it burns your mouth. Something fierce. But it's the strongest we got. See, what's happening right now, Kevin, is this. The market is still quote unquote immature, like I
100%.
was when I first started. I would smoke anything, right? Didn't care. It could be sprayed with all sorts. I don't care. It's got paraquat. Yeah, is it good? Yeah, I'll smoke it. Make me throw up. Yeah, I'll have another one. But what happens is the market will mature. The palate of the buyer will mature over time. In the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to find more people looking for what's the terpene profile on that? What's the mixture? Is it limonene? Is it pinene? Is it beta caryophyllene? Is it ocimene? What's the profile, right? Because that's when you really start to get it. And by the way, coming up, I think it's November 9th and 10th, the Harvest Cup in Massachusetts, which is at the DCU Center in Worcester. If you're local, you have to be there because that's where the tribe is. And on Sunday, they do the awards. You're going to see some incredible flower and concentrates and edibles in those cases, and you're going to hear the winners. And it's where your family is. So go there, get yourself there. I don't care if you got a thumb to get there, hitchhike, take an Uber, get yourself there because you'll thank me if
I,
you've never been.
I think
It's
I've
an
met you
experience.
there actually
You
before.
probably have.
I think I have.
Yeah. And so understanding that the the market will mature and they'll look for better quality. They won't always be looking for the strongest THC percentage because they'll start to realize it's not about the THC percentage, it's about the blend. So the blend is the THC. It's also it's the terpenes. It's the maturity of the cure, and does it have that?
Yeah.
And once it has that, you go like you spin one up, or you stuff your pipe, or whatever. And again, this is why those that enjoy hashish or they like dabs is because they're looking for the bitter flavors. It's not as much about potency because it is potent because it's concentrated.
So when you see the majority of the legal market, do you think that they're buying for quality or quantity?
That's a tough question to answer without having real facts. I can guess that there's a portion of the market that's looking for quality. And I think that percentages is probably a little bit lower. So there's three different types of buyers in any type of product or service. There's I like to buy good stuff, some like to buy better, and some like the best, right? Good, better, best. The people that buy the best don't have a money problem. They don't care about the cost. They just want what they want the best. Then there's people that, yeah, I don't want the cheapest stuff and I can't afford the most expensive, so I buy the middle. And then you have somebody that I just don't have either one of those. I just need weed. And like again, the early days of me smoking, I don't care what it was. So I'll buy what I can. I'll buy the chafe. I'll buy the trim. I don't care. So to answer the question, I think again, being a younger, immature palate market, not fully matured, you're going to have people that buy on price, some buy on potency, and some will buy on quality. So again, you have that we call it a dichotomy of buyers where they're looking for certain things. So I couldn't tell you unless I had the data, and the data would come from the dispensaries. They have that data.
But would you say that a lot of the stuff, if you own a grow shop, am I wrong?
No, I don't own it. No, I worked there.
Oh,
I don't work there currently. I'm working on several projects now. We're working on a licensed grow operation in South America right now in Colombia, and then also another one in Massachusetts.
would you say that the majority of the stuff that is sold at a grow shop would be more aiming for the yield?
Um, so the buyer that goes into a grow store, they're they're either experienced or they're new at it, or they're experienced and looking to learn more. So it depends on what side of the equation they're on. If they're on the equation of, hey, I'm growing up for a sick friend that, is dying of cancer, that's different. Or, hey, I just grown my own, I only growing 4 plants or 6 plants. I don't need a lot. So they're not growing for yield. They're growing for having good weed. Then you got people that are in the hustle, and you picked my drift up on that one.
Hmm.
They're looking for yield and quality. They used to just look for yield, but guess what? The market shifted. When the market shifted, it was like, okay, we have we have dispensaries on every corner. It was first medical only, then it became recreational and medical, and then now medical is overtaking. I'm sorry, recreation is overtaking medical. Then you had all types of product coming into the market, right, from everywhere, from different countries. Okay. It was just a text coming in, sorry.
No worries.
So back to the point, which is the grower today is different than the grower 5 years ago. The grower today, if he's in the hustle side of it, they have to grow the highest quality possible. Um, they have to grow the highest quality possible because if they're going to compete in the market, whether it's, the underground market, the gray market, um, and if they're going to keep a customer, they have to have quality. And if it isn't fire, they're going to sit on it and then go like, oh my God, I'm sitting on this herb and I can't turn it. Right. So they have to work towards the best they can. And that's where if you go to a grocery store where, there's either the owners or the people that work there are growers, they can usually give you some tips and some techniques and help you reduce your learning curve, which is what I did. I reduced a lot of learning curves on people, but I also took a lot of growers and took their game from doing good to make it, wow, my product is fire now.
Do you think that looks are very important in today's market?
Yeah, because the consumer buys on look first, nose second. The B back is on flavor and effect. So I could show you the bag and, like at the dispensary, you don't get to smell it. You don't get to go this. You don't even get to look at it. You go to a little touchpad and you go, that's what I want. And the picture looks beautiful. It's like buying a burger from, one of these fast foods. They look juicy and delicious and they're dripping and you get, what's this flat, dried up thing? And the hell is that?
It looks
It's
like it
not the
was in the bottom of
picture.
someone's shoe.
Yeah, it's not the picture. I looked at Leafly and Leafly showed me a big juicy butt. Yeah. So it's important that the eye is what attracts you first. The nose is what says, I want to try that. The flavor and the effect would say, I want another one. Those are the four check boxes for a successful be back. Or, dude, I'm all out, man. When are you going to get that back again? I don't know. Want me to put you on the list?
When it comes to, let me ask you two questions in one to end it
Hmm.
off. Why do you think mold is so popular on the legal market? And also, why do you think that the radiation levels of some of the plants on the legal market are actually going to eventually harm the people?
Great question. The first part of that was why do I think these grow ops have molds? A lot of them built their operations either on a tight budget or they fitted a building. They didn't start from scratch, and so it comes down to atmospheric controls. Also, trying to grow too many in a crowded space will cause problems. It's also cleanliness. It's also air qualities, scrubbers cleaning the air. You have contamination that gets into the grow. You have workers that come in that aren't properly putting on PPE. They potentially could be home growers and they come in with their street clothes and they keep their street hat on and there's different things that can cause the problem. It's understanding how to prevent that. So the lead grower should know these things or learn these things of how to prevent or to mitigate that. And the second part of your question is using the irradiation to kill the mold spores so that they pass testing. I think there's only one or two companies in Mass that does it. That all the other shops that had a problem send their product to run it through that microwave basically and kill all the bacterias and stuff. That doesn't. It's not a residual. It's not like radioactive or anything like that. It's just that some people are very particular about their weed and how it was processed. Like I don't buy foods that say bioengineered products in this. I read every package, and you should too. Look at it and you see that little hidden down the bottom, bioengineered. That means it's chemically produced food. It's not good for the body. You want to lean more towards natural stuff if you can afford it. So again, some people are particular about their weeds, and they're like, I don't want microwaved weed, right? Um, it's not a health benefit. It's not a health. Actually, it's probably a little healthier than getting the weed that has botrytis on it or it has powdery mildew on it. So some people have very sensitive lungs or they have lung issues, and if they smoke it and they like to burn it, they could hurt themselves. Like I always tell, my growers, like, listen, if you see bud rot, cut that section out and get rid of it. Don't try to save it because you need the money and try to pass it off. You're gonna make somebody sick. That's a no-go, no bueno.
And
And so
they'll never come back if they get that. You know what I mean?
done.
Yeah.
Where'd Jimmy go? Where's
D-
Jimmy? I haven't seen Jimmy in a while. Jimmy found another Joe.
exactly. Well,
So
well, I definitely agree. I think that in the bigger picture, I think that a lot of my opinion would be just the overproduction. I think the overproduction is causing the mold because it's very, very hard for people to keep up with the whole drying, the whole curing, everything. The storage of it is it's not easy. So it's leading to situations like this one where people aren't super happy with the product, and a lot of people on the market don't really understand why yet. But it's going to be something that I think is just going to come with time, and it's going to be something people will 100% be able to figure out and still be able to produce massive amounts. So I think it's all about timing, and it's all about just the evolution of this whole game. So I do think that you are a big piece of the puzzle. I think that this was something that I know this was something that I very much learned a lot from. This was something that I really will very much want to promote a lot, and I'm going to do a lot of clips if if I don't have a bunch of clips posted this week, they will be posted next week because I do have a few things going on this weekend. But
yeah, don't
much,
rush. Take your time. See, I understand what you're doing. You're trying to build a platform and an audience, and it takes time.
yeah,
And the hard part is getting in front of, and I started doing this years ago, and I was like, oh, I sound like an idiot. Let's do it over. So
yeah,
you just have to do it, and each time you do it, you get smoother at it, and you get better at it. And then, you can go into the platform and change. You can do a virtual background there too, so you can put up a thing you want. There's pictures. It's real simple to do. So look at
uh,
that, and then you get comfortable talking, and then interviewing you know your speaker, and have you did a great job, by the way, and
thank you.
take this content and just, if you have editing software, chop it up, right, and take this, these two segments we did, and turn it into four different segments or six different segments. Just figured, oh, this is a good topic, let's cut this piece out, because your audience, this is what I figured out: more than 2 minutes, you lost them.
Yes,
So if you can do 30-second, 1 minute bites, you're good. So
I
we're at the
agree.
end of our last minute. It's going to cut us off. So I'd like to say thanks for joining us, guys. Don't forget to follow us at City Grown, and also Kevin's channel, and tell a friend, because we want to get this message out how to work with this sacred plant called cannabis.
Much appreciation.
Peace.
Definitely hope to have you back once I actually have it more established.
Appreciate you, brother.
Stay
You have a
blessed
great
up.
day.